Glad to see a beautiful studio audience. I met Jen a little while ago. My wife and I met her through a mutual friend. And when she asked me to take part in this, and when I met Sam for the first time, I thought, geez, these people, they're amazing. I mean, I cannot imagine someone experiencing the trauma and the trials and tribulations that they've gone through, and then to come through and be as selfless and using an opportunity where they've come through something so difficult as divorce to share and to help others. Shall we introduce ourselves here?
Hello, everyone. My name is Samuel Robertson. I am a consultant and trainer in the industry of efficiency and productivity. I have a company called The Connector Solutions, and the focus is on training teams on how to identify their own inefficiencies so that they can have a more enjoyable work experience and that the company that they work for can be more productive, make more money, so on and so forth.
My name is Genevieve. Hi. It is so wonderful to see your faces tonight. I know I'm supposed to be introducing myself, but it is so great to see you. And I just want to say thank you so much for being here with me. I'm Genevieve. I am a speaker, trainer, coach, and registered psychotherapist. I run another podcast called the Relationship Series, where we have transformational conversations that help us to revolutionize our relationships. I have a blast doing that. I also love journeying with clients as we achieve increased emotional, relational, spiritual, and mental health. So I love doing that with individuals, families, couples, and organizations now. And this is an awesome initiative that I'm super passionate about as well. So I'm really, really glad to be here. But I think I'm more glad that you guys are here with me.
Awesome. So tell me, why are we here tonight? Why are we here? Tell me, Sam. Come on.
All right. So exactly 9 years ago today, on July 18th, 2015.
Happy anniversary.
I appreciate that.
What would be?
Yeah.
9 years.
This would be our 9-year anniversary.
So this is a non-anniversary.
Non-anniversary.
It's our non-anniversary. Okay, sorry.
You should record that. 9 years ago, on a beautiful beach just a few hours east of Toronto at Sandbanks Provincial Park, Genevieve and I got married. And it's a beautiful day. The weather was perfect. And we thought that was it. We thought that this was till death do us part. This is me. This is Genevieve. We were joined together in holy matrimony. It was a really special day. Yes, me and our friend in holy matrimony. It was honestly, it was so special. For me, it was a fulfillment of years of hoping and wondering and thinking and planning. At that point, I thought I was going to be the best 27-year-old husband in human history. All right? I'd read the books. I had done the counseling. I thought I was prepared. And we invited a bunch of people, 300 to 400 of our closest friends and family. And we put in a lot of time and money. And we were joined together. We had gone through such an interesting journey. We had started off as acquaintances. I had heard about her before I met her. When we first met, she wasn't my cup of tea, right? Not because of anything.
Is that your cup of coffee?
She wasn't my cup of water.
Nothing at all, eh? Just
and that's not because, clearly she's an unbelievably beautiful woman. Clearly she's smart. She's charismatic. She's kind. She's thoughtful. Oh, sorry, this is not the wedding vows. This is our divorce podcast. So clearly, there's a lot of reasons that we'd want to be together. But it was an interesting journey of ins and outs and conversations that eventually led us from being acquaintances to friends to boyfriend and girlfriend to engaged and then to married. And then two were joined together. Two became one. We come from a background of faith. And we had such amazing words of encouragement and inspiration from the people in our lives. And I'm painting a picture here because we had no idea at that time that things would play out the way that they did. That just within 3 years, we'd be not only separated but divorced. And the challenge with divorce is, Chetty, maybe you can help us with this. All right? Can you please try to remove those two pieces of paper from each other? Is it easy?
No, not at all.
You look like you go to the gym. Like put some muscles into it.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what happened. Yeah. And that's what happened to us. When something is joined together, you can't separate it cleanly. There's damage that happens.
And so for the purpose of this illustration, I want you guys to understand these two pieces of paper were glued together and had time to join, okay? These two we just glued together, right? And so it's easier the less time you spend together. It's easier to pull apart. And so if I were to pull these apart, less damage, but there's still transfer. Right? And so just understanding that there's time involved as well as in the process.
And similar to these pieces of paper, like I felt like our world had been torn apart. Like we weren't in the same condition. Like, I felt hopeless. I felt depressed. I felt confused. I didn't know what had happened. I didn't know what needed to happen next. I felt stuck. Like some of the thoughts that went through my head, not just for minutes, but for hours, for days, in some cases for years, are, well, I'm damaged goods now. Like who's ever going to want me? Who's going to want to marry me? Am I ever going to be loved? Anybody who loves me is only going to be able to love me for a short period of time. All right? I'm a failure as a husband. I'm a failure as a man. And it was no joke. And anybody who has experienced divorce may have experienced some similar thoughts, some similar feelings. If there are people in your lives who they've experienced divorce and they weren't able to express it, thoughts and the feelings that go through your head are devastating, right? And is that how you felt, Genevieve?
Yeah, I think how I felt. I think after life exploded, really. And I think after the dust kind of settled, I was grieving. So I felt all of those feels. I felt sorrow. I felt rage. I felt injustice. And I think walking through it just a little ways and then looking back, I felt like disgusted, and I felt sick to my stomach. Part of what came to me was, and this is going to sound like blame, but it's really not blame. It's really just an explanation of what happened. Like in the months following marriage, the constant refrain was like, "Hey, how's married life?" It's like, "Oh, it's okay." This was my answer. "Oh, it's okay. Oh, it's fine. Oh, it's all right." And then the next question would be, "On any buns in the oven? When are kids coming?" And I was like, "Oh, well, no buns in the oven yet. Don't know." And I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm not Angelina Jolie. I'm not Brad Pitt. I'm not like, these. I don't have Oscar-worthy performances. So at some point, like, couldn't somebody clearly see that something wasn't right? And then I just stopped saying it's all right. I was just like, listen, something's wrong here. Something's wrong. I don't feel good. This is not how it's supposed to be. This is not what I expected. And I remembered not once, not more than once, more than one person responded to me. It was like, "Shh, you don't talk like that about your marriage. You don't talk like that about your husband. You don't say stuff like that." Mm-hmm. And I was like, where do I go for help here if I can't speak up? It was like, you're the little kid who starts crying on the playground, go cry in the corner while everybody else keeps playing. Because it's, fun times. Everybody wants to laugh. Nobody has room or time or space for your pain. And I was like, oh man, what do I do? So I think I felt, even in this, like compelled to like create a space where we can have these kinds of conversations and talk about like the real, and so that we can heal and so that we can grow in a better way.
It's interesting how you brought that up and the feelings and the emotions that go with it. Do you think some of that could have had, like, people going into a marriage, what do you think they should be thinking about before they even get there? Did anything ever come to you that said, you know what, perhaps I may have seen this sign before before we even got married? Or this is what people should look for and anticipate.
That's good.
So the honest answer is I didn't know a lot of what was going on with myself. I didn't know who I was in the context of marriage until I got married.
Right.
There were some signs before, but not enough for me to understand truly where I was at and how prepared I was for marriage. That said, if I was to do things over, I think my preparation level was about 75%. And the reason that my preparation level was at 75% was because we were building towards a wedding, right? We had to think about money. We had to think about spending time together and getting to know each other. And things were just moving so quickly. And we loved each other. So we thought we'd be like, 75% is good. We'll figure out the other 25% once we get married. If I was to do it over, no, I would get to 110% in terms of accountability, in terms of transparency, in terms of making sure that I had professionals and people who love me poke holes in my character and poke holes in my perspectives going into the marriage.
Yeah, I would say that's just such a hard question to answer, because in hindsight, everything looks clear because you're here, right? And you're looking back, you're like, oh man, I should have seen that red flag, blue flag, green flag, all the flags. But the reality is, when you're there in the moment, you can't see that. You're just there in the moment. So I think in looking back, I mean, could we have done things differently? Yes, sure. Could we have made different decisions? Yes, always. When it comes to specifically for marriage, I think there are best practices, and we did not apply them all. But we got some of them. So theoretically speaking, biblically speaking, we knew stuff. We had ideas. We had information. Information, however, doesn't automatically get translated to behavior. I could know a lot. I could know not to eat chips, chocolate, and cookies, but because I want to lose weight.
The chocolate part?
You know what I mean? But it's going to come 11 o'clock at night. I've been sitting at my computer all day long, and I want some cookies, and the Oreos are there. And yes, I do want to lose weight because I have bikini body to make and, chips to go on. But the cookies look good right now, so I'm going to eat the cookies. So I think the reality is that the knowledge, the information, the theory, all that stuff that we think we know, it gets borne out, played out, tested out on the ground, in the fire, like in the day-to-day. And that's where it all falls down.
Perhaps sometimes our traumas aren't triggered until we face a certain situation, correct? So we may going into something think we're invincible, or we've got all the answers, and it's like going on a job, and I said, sure, I got this. But then once you get there, you realize, oh my gosh, it's a lot more difficult, and you can only learn by experience. So it's one of those. So I think it's a good approach.
The best gift you can possibly get some loved ones when they're getting married is a time machine. If you get them a time machine, I guarantee you that they can go back and fix everything once they have the information that they have. But we don't know until we get there, right?
Yeah, true. Is that where this whole idea came from? Where this whole idea came from, and how we evolved into this?
This started earlier this year. Now, Genevieve, we hadn't talked in maybe 4 or 5 years at all, like not a word in maybe 5 years. The only communication that we had, the only place that I saw what she was up to was on social media. Every now and then I would like a post of hers or comment, or she would comment on something that I posted, etc.
Did I comment on your stuff?
You commented on my stuff.
Did I don't remember.
Yeah, you were all over it. Like, oh my gosh, great post, Samuel.
He said all over. I was not all over it.
Wow.
Let's stop. Let's stop.
You. She was stalking you, man.
Yeah. She was deep in the creep, I'm telling you.
Deep in the creep. For real? I swear I posted one comment.
I may be exaggerating slightly, but the point was...
As you do.
We had...
One comment, deep in the creep. Okay, what about 2 comments? Is that restraining order level?
We're going to have to go back and check some of these receipts at some point.
Let's check the receipts.
But for the purposes of today's conversation, we'll assume that she was obsessing over me, and I saw that from afar. No, so we didn't know what each other was up to, but what I could see from afar, based on her social media presence, was that Genevieve was very impact driven, and she was becoming more and more vulnerable in sharing her story and sharing her experiences with divorce. And I respected that, and that was also the journey that I was on. I was in a position where what was important to me was being vulnerable, being transparent, sharing my experience and my strength and my learnings in the hope of helping people and, showing them that there is a way out of things that I didn't know how to get out of at one point in my life. As I made that decision to kind of step out in a more public-facing way, something that was super important to me was making sure that Genevieve felt honored and respected in that process, right? Making sure that whatever I said, whatever I shared about my own life and my own journey was something that was respectful and honoring to her, especially given the fact that I wasn't always respectful and honoring to her in the time we'd been married, right? So I reached out to her to start a conversation and basically proposed that to her and asked her, like, what is there anything that I can say or do that would make you feel disrespected or dishonored?
Gosh, can you imagine that?
I know, right? Like, that was big. That was big. In that initial conversation, I did feel honored. And I think what struck me was that you were embodying the principles of like revolutionary relationship in that moment. Like when you asked me the question, and I was like, man, that's pretty cool. Like, I was a little bit jealous, a little bit envious, to be honest. I was like, oh, he's doing the things. Like, this is how you do relationship with people that you care about. And I think part of me was envious, and part of me was inspired.
You're making me brown skin blush right now.
I can't right now. So I can't. This is the thing. Now, no, I won't go off on a tangent. But what was I saying? Where was it?
Brown skin blush. Yeah.
Inspired,
Brown
jealous.
skin, that's where we were. That's in spite of it all. No. Yeah, I was inspired. That's the truth. I think more than inspired, though, I got a glimpse of an opportunity to model this kind of interaction on a larger scale, and for like more to see. And that's where the invitation really came from. It was like, oh, well, we can have this conversation. Let's do it for a relationship series. So I invited you to come on the relationship series. I was like, oh, I'm doing this segment on divorce. You should come. Let's talk about it. And I thought it was just going to end that relationship series, And then I remember I said, hey, you should come. He gave me this very like, don't kill me response. Like, I don't want to come on your petty little podcast thing.
No. I didn't know you were serious.
Okay.
I had no idea.
I was just joking.
I thought you were joking.
I was low-key joking. Just a little bit. I was actually serious, though. So I wasn't surprised when you messaged me, maybe like, I don't know, it was probably like half an hour later. And you were like, yeah, that's actually a really good idea. I'm going to come on your podcast. And this is all the stuff that we could possibly do, like, in addition to, because, his mind goes all over the place. So I was like, whoa, like, that's for real. Like, this is a real thing. It could be a lot bigger. And I thought, okay, well, let me think and pray on it, because this is now a little more serious than what I thought and going a little further than where my mind had initially gone. And so I did pray about it, and I journaled and I meditated. And a few things came to mind. 3 things came to mind for me. One, in that space, I really felt an invitation to like be a forerunner in this area. I felt the invitation to be a forerunner because I didn't know anybody doing this like this with an ex-partner and speaking specifically to divorced peoples. I didn't know of anybody. And so I was like, okay, got that. And then another thing I should say that struck me was I had been praying for a purpose partner. And I mean, sidebar, wait a minute. So when I was praying for a purpose partner, in my mind, I had husband, okay? Not ex-husband, but husband. new husband. I was like, God, I'm doing all the work. I'm doing all the things. I'm ready now. I've processed the things. I am ready to be in a long-term committed partnership with a purposeful person and all the things. And heaven clearly misinterpreted what I was saying. Although what I do realize is that we are partnered for purpose in this, but I was thinking like 6'7", maybe vanilla swirl, like mocha, like NBA player vibes, maybe volleyball player, I don't know, soccer player, something other than my ex-husband rolling in, yeah. So instead, what I got was a really, a really profound burden on my heart to speak to a group of people that God cares for that is often forgotten, underserved, and under-resourced. Like, God, for real.
I will say that whereas I have not made the NBA yet, I don't know what the future holds for myself.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's July now? Training camp is in September. So we'll see. But
Miracles do happen.
There's always the Euro League or the Developmental League.
Yeah.
To start.
I would need some development. That's the truth. Another reason on a practical level that this made sense when Genevieve proposed the idea was that I had already had a lot of great experiences sharing my story with people in my life or people I had met, especially men, right? And it was really eye-opening and helpful to the both of us when those conversations, when I would share my story and they would say, wow, I'm going through the same thing right now, or I've been going through the same thing, or I went through that in the past, or my cousin went through this, or like, I think this is something that my family members are experiencing too. And that those conversations were so symbiotic and so like beautiful. And I realized that like the more that I shared, the more I benefited and the more the people I was talking to were benefited as well. So for me, it just made sense that if there's a way that we could do this together and amplify each other's voices in that sense, my experience was that sharing made me stronger and made them stronger. Would you say your experience was similar?
Yes, I hear that. And I think the experience was similar, but as a therapist, it was like the opposite, because I was on the opposite end and I would be the one listening to people tell me about what they were going through, and I didn't do the disclosing or sharing. So I went through divorce before I went through my own divorce. And it was in journeying with others and listening to how they got through their stuff that I picked up on a few things on how to do my own healing journey better. And I think what was interesting about that and maybe a little uncomfortable about that was like the silence that I had to hold. Like I don't usually self-disclose with clients, but I experienced healing as I listened to them. Like they were sharing their stories and I was experiencing healing in walking with them through their stories. And so then I realized like, oh, there's another, sort of way that I can also share my story. And that gives me greater conviction and appreciation for sharing my story now, because now others can experience that same kind of healing through me sharing with them,
They often said the best way to learn is to teach.
Oh, yeah.
Perhaps, that's where the wisdom came from, where you're teaching something, you're often seeing the result, and it's kind of molding something within yourself.
Yeah, I think that's also probably a big part of why we're doing this, is because we're learning so much, right? Like we're still on our own journeys independently, and now we're on this new journey together. And in this process, we're receiving even more healing. We're not coming from the place that says we've arrived and that we know everything and that we are the experts on this. Like this process also involves us doing more research, learning, talking to each other, learning from each other. And so it's a beautiful journey so far, but there's a lot of questions that we want to be answered as well.
I think that's why you guys thought I was joking when I say I've never seen people so evolved. It takes a different level of involvement to be that aware and that kind. It's like you're cut. You have a cut, and while you're you're mending someone else's cut while you're in pain yourselves. So, what's the vision? Where do you see this whole thing going?
Like the bigger?
Yeah, the bigger picture.
Y'all know I love visions. Ultimately, okay, I mean, if we're talking big picture, the biggest picture that we can see is ultimately we want to have a negative impact on the divorce rate. We want to see divorce rates like decrease, decline, and disappear even, okay? Because we're pro-covenant and we are pro-marriage. And I think that has to be made clear as well. We're not out here like celebrating divorce and saying everybody should get divorced. What we're doing is saying we've gotten divorced and that there are a lot of people that are in the same situation that require help, healing, hand-holding, and all the next, because not a lot of people are speaking to us. God is not like, oh, you got a divorce, forget you, go sit somewhere, and deal with your life. Like, God is still for people. He's still for redemption. He's still for recovery, right? He's still for revival. He's still for renewal, all the things. And so if God is for restoration, then he has restoration in store for even people who have gotten divorced. And I think we've been like hired into that department, so to speak. If we look at it as in, there's an office building, there's 3 departments, and there's a department for people who are not married yet, people who want to get married, right? The phones are ringing off the hook in that department. Everybody's like, ding, ding, ring, ring, hello, can I get married, please? And the people are picking up the phone and they're like, yeah, we got apps for that. We got Tinder, we got Bumble, we got Living Single, Christian Mingle, we got all the things, right? We got movies for that. We got songs for that. We've got poetry for that. We got everything for that. And then there's like the people who are already married. Let's say that's like the second department. And the phones are ringing off the hook there because people are like, yo, I'm struggling. Yeah, like, I don't know who my husband is. I don't know who my wife is. I don't want to be in this marriage anymore. I don't want these kids no more. I am struggling. Somebody help me out here. And then we got people answering the phones like, listen, we got courses for that. We got books for that. We got we got retreats for that. We got intensives for that. We got all kinds of things for that. And they're getting resourced. And then you get, and in my mind, I'm seeing this picture. Like, you get to the third department, you get to the, like, people who have gone through it and gotten divorced department, and there's like tumbleweed. There's like tumbleweed. The phones are still ringing off the hook, though.
Because people are asking for help.
There's nobody there to answer the phones and to resource the number of people that are calling. And guess what? The number of people that are calling in that department is more than the number of people that are calling in the first department. It's 52% right now. 52%. For those of us who are math majors, that's above half. So there's more people calling in this department, and there's tumbleweed. There's nobody answering the phones. And I think we've been hired into that department, whether it's to answer all the phones and whatever, or to recruit people to answer the phones, or to like send out a flag and say, hey guys, can we get some more people in here answering the phones? There's some hurting folks out there who are struggling because they've gone through this terrible, traumatic, hard life situation and they don't know what to do. And then broken people are going through the process again. My goodness, it's a mess. It's a mess. And so I think that's part of the bigger vision and mission and like passion on the inside. It's like the recognition that there are people literally like struggling and dying. And that doesn't need to be the case. I know. I know. That was, yeah, okay. Yeah. So that's where that came from.
Do you feel inspired yet?
It's the passion in me. It's the passion in me because I'm just like, man, like, anyway, I'm seeing it more clearly now. But yes, go on. Sorry, guys.
I agree.
Drop the mic.
Yeah, there's not much that I can add to that, but I really do want to like co-sign and affirm everything that you said. Like it was and has been a rough and lonely road out there. Like, we looked on Amazon together, and we were looking for resources, and we looked to see how many resources there were available for books on how to have a healthy marriage. And we saw over 9,000 books that had been written and available and were published on Amazon. Then we searched for books on how to heal from divorce. We found less than 400 books. Less than 400 books available. So there's a big discrepancy, but as Genevieve said, more than half the people that are getting married are getting divorced. That's the current reality as it stands. So there's a huge need for help and support. The other piece is we also want to add in our own experience going through marriage, separation, and divorce to help people on that front end in that earlier category as well, right? We want to add our context, our unique context. A good friend of mine is actually listening to this podcast. He said, you know what would be interesting? Like, we hear a lot from people who succeed, but understanding that you failed at this, I would love to hear from you and your perspective as somebody who failed, right? That's a piece of the story. That's a perspective that would add to my own knowledge and strengthen what I'm doing as a husband. So that stuck with me as well. I don't know if you remember this. We were looking into the main reasons that people got married and contrasting that with the main reasons that people get divorced. Do you remember the number one reason that people get married?
Sex.
That was not it.
No, that wasn't it.
Yeah.
Money?
That's a good guess as well.
That's not it.
That's not it. Very important things.
Well, I should probably know this.
Yeah, very important things in a marriage, I think. But the primary reason that people get married is for familial or spiritual reasons. Now, what does that mean? When you're planning out your life, you think at some point, okay, I'm going to get a job or a career, then I'm going to have a family, I'm going to have somebody who loves me, and we're going to spend life together, then maybe I'm going to have some children. That's your life plan. That's the life arc that the majority of us think about and go through, right? The challenge is that when you get there and you don't have those things anymore that you wanted, why stay? This is what people experience. So for example, you wanted to have a family, you wanted to raise some kids, and now the kids are grown and you're left with this person next to you. Why stay, right? If they're not giving you what you want. Or you got married because you wanted companionship, but then you realize that they don't understand you the way you thought they would. Their interests are different. The things that they want to do with their flex time is different. The times they want to sleep is different. The times they want to work is different. The times they want to have sex is different. So at that point, math that people are doing, the calculations, they say, if I leave this, if I free myself from this situation, I can get more of what I want out of life, which is like, it's understandable that people think that way, right?
I have a question. Some people may think that you're endorsing divorce. How do you make the distinction, and how do you have people understand that you're still pro-marriage?
That's a great question. I think some of how you answered the last question speaks to that, because there's a difference between like the reasons for doing things and the purpose of a thing. And I think the distinction has to be made, because like culture and society and friends and family, like they can have different reasons for why they get married, or give you reasons for why you should get married. But I think if we go back to the purpose of marriage, only the creator of marriage can determine what the purpose of marriage is. And I mean, not everybody is a person of faith, but as people of faith, you know, we subscribe to the belief that God created marriage and he did it for a purpose. He didn't do it for marriage to end or in divorce, right? He did it to reflect something really unique and beautiful in the earth, and to represent himself and his relationship with us. And this is not to be preachy or anything like that, but just to remind us that it's important to go to the source. And because we know the source, our advocacy is for what he wants and designed. We also have to note that God is for us. And I said it before, God is for people. And so he always has a plan when we mess up. There's two very unique sort of dispositions in place. And we represent both ends. We're like Alpha and Omega. No, I'm just joking. We are not Alpha and Omega. But we started something, and now we're at the end of something, and now we're starting something new.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about this is that we knew this when we got married. We knew that marriage was about something bigger than the two of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
And yet we're still here.
we knew it in theory.
All right. It's one of my favorite quotes by a gentleman named Peter Sage. He says that theory does not cover the price of admission to the higher levels of life. Yeah. Just being educated on something is not enough to get there. So again, it's a journey, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Next time on Sam and Jen Got Divorced.
If you have some questions you'd like to ask the couple here, please feel free to step over to the mic and ask away.
Our hope is that by sharing our mistakes and what we've learned from them, be supporting healthy conversations in our communities. So if you're enjoying listening to this, do us a quick favor, like, comment, and subscribe. It's not only encouraging, but it helps us in tangible ways. Get you on the next episode, family.